past 6 on Tuesday, April 27th of 2021. This hearing is being held as required by the provisions of Chapter 131, Section 40 of the General Laws of the Commonwealth, an act relative to the protection of the wetlands as most recently amended. Notice of the time and place of this hearing was posted in the town hall. Persons wishing to be heard will be called in the following order. Close this document. Okay, so first order of business, minutes for approval from April 13. I reviewed, I don't see any need to change anything. If anybody on the commission had anything they'd like to change.
No.
Okay. And before I take the vote, what I should have done was announce which people on this Zoom call are members of the commission. So I'm Robert Rocha, I'm the chair. Also joining us as commission members are Everett Filler, who is our vice chair, Ryan Resendes, and Rick Pimentel. Marilee Kelly, our agent, is on the call, as is Joanne Mello, our senior clerk. And then everybody else that's on the call is here for one of the items on the agenda. So that being said, I'll entertain a motion to accept the minutes of April 13 as presented.
Motion to accept the minutes.
Thank you, Rick. Do we have a second? Ryan or Everett, give me a wave.
I wasn't there, but I'll second them.
Okay. Any further discussion?
No.
Just going across the screen, Everett, how do you vote?
Yeah.
Ryan?
Yes.
All right, Rick?
Yes.
Yeah, that's unanimous. Thank you all. Next item, meeting mail. So Agent Kelly, I will go over to you. Do we have any meeting mail?
No meeting mail tonight.
Okay. We'll be getting to PJ Keating next, but Luke Legere has asked to speak on a procedural issue. So Mr. Legere, I will turn the floor over to you.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Luke Legere, McGregor and Legere, on behalf of PJ Keating Company. As the commission probably recalls, we were last before you on March 23rd for the notice of intent that appears on tonight's agenda. And at that meeting, we had requested a continuance to May 11th to allow time to put together the plans that we've been discussing and get everything else lined up for you. And subsequent to that vote to continue to May 11th, it's my understanding that the commission, I think at the April 13th meeting, if I've got my dates correct, voted to have Keating come back this evening to continue the hearing tonight. But as you're probably aware, under the state open meeting law, the commission needs to continue hearing to a date and time certain. And that was done to May 11th. So to then kind of retroactively shorten that time period, in my view, would actually be a violation of the open meeting law. I did email town council about a half hour ago or so when we realized sort of how this had all played out. It just it didn't immediately occur to me. So I apologize for not mentioning it sooner, but we do want to mention it before any discussion starts, or frankly, before the hearing even starts tonight, because in our view, it would really open up any decision that the commission may ultimately issue on this notice of intent to an appeal based on a procedural deficiency, which would just be a shame for everybody involved. So as you can probably see, I'm here, Doug Vigno's here, Rob Robinson's here, I think James Tatro's up there. So we are not trying to duck the commission by any stretch, but it really just is a procedural issue that we just don't want to get hung up on for our sake or for the commission's sake, for that matter.
Thanks for bringing that up and for clarifying that. So so just to go back to the original intent of March 23rd, then I believe you said, correct?
That was the last hearing, the last night of hearing on the NOI, yes.
Baby. I mean, it's like the normal.
On that. Whoever's on the iPhone, I need you to mute or unless you were speaking to the commission. So, that being said, I'm okay with entertaining a motion to continue to May 11th, just so we don't run afoul of any open meeting laws violations. I mean, I get your point about not wanting to appear to be trying to skirt what we have here for business, but we also want to be sure that we're not in violation of any state laws. So
Yes,
I'm
that's exactly
okay
right.
with it. Hmm?
No, I'm sorry. That's exactly, you've hit the nail on the head.
Okay. Everett, you have a question or a comment?
I have a comment. This is what I felt at our last meeting, that we couldn't change it arbitrarily, not give them the 4 weeks they had asked for. That's why I voted against at the last meeting.
And if anything, it sure would have been, well, from March 23rd, it would have been 6. Marilee, any comments from you on this? Otherwise, I'm going to have the commission vote on this.
No, I think it's up to the commission.
Okay. So with,
If I may, this is Doug Vino.
please, Doug, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, if I may, the actual last meeting was April 13th.
So it would have been just a 4-week continuance. It wasn't for mine.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for clarifying. Anybody else from PJ Keating or anybody want to speak on this issue before I open it up to the commission?
No, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. In that case, I'll entertain a motion. I'm just going to word it quite simply. Entertain a motion to continue PJ Keating's hearing until Tuesday, May 11th.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Everett. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Ryan. Any further discussion? Okay, roll call vote. As I see you on my screen, Everett, how do you vote?
Yes.
Ryan,
Yes.
Rick,
Yes.
Heidi? That's unanimous. Thank you for the clarification, Mr. Leger. The PJ Keating hearing will be continued till May 11th.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will inform the commission that the hay bale, the straw wattle and silt fence are in place.
So just so you know that they are in place at this bottom of the slope, okay?
Okay. Mr. Vigno, your microphone was a little low. Could I have you repeat that so I know that our senior clerk, got that wording for the minutes?
Yes, certainly. I just wanted to inform the commission that the straw wattle and silt fence are in place at the base of the washed stone dust piles. And I just wanted to let the commission know that so that, we're just telling you 2 weeks prior to next meeting. That's all, just so you'll know.
Good. Well, it's good to have that on record. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so my thanks to the folks from PJ Keating, and as I tell everybody else, we won't be insulted if you leave the meeting.
Thank you and have a good evening.
We know you have other things to do. And just for the record, that continuance was for PJ Keating Company, 72 South Main Street, file number SE 001-0558. Okay, next, continue from previous meeting. I have an NOI, and I'm going to do these one at a time. Alan Clapp, Cushing Solar LLC, Cushing Lane, map 7, lot 26, file number SE 001-0562. Property owner Raymond White, White's Farm Incorporated. Notice of intent was filed by Alan Clapp, Cushing Solar LLC, for property located on Cushing Lane, map 7, lot 26. Excuse me. The applicant proposes to construct a large-scale solar project, 2.0 megawatt, on a portion of the Cushing Lane field property within the 100-foot buffer zone to a bordering vegetated wetland. The applicant is represented by Stephen Joseph of SciTech Incorporated. Plan name is Cushing Solar LLC, 2 megawatt AC in Acushnet, Massachusetts, dated January 11 of 2021. Mr. Giosa, I see you're here in the call. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. For the record, Steve Gioso with SciTech Civil and Environmental Consultants and representing Cushing Solar LLC this evening. This is a continued public hearing, and we had made an initial presentation, I think several meetings ago, to the commission. In the interim, we also presented to the planning board, and they referred the project to their independent peer review consultant, SW Cole. We did get their peer review, and we have submitted revised documents addressing their specific comments, as well as comments received by the planning board. And I think in this case, I think there was one minor request by the commission. If you'd like, I can share my screen if that's appropriate, and just,
Yeah, I think it would be.
okay.
Is he all set for that? Or Joanne, or whoever?
Yep, he's all set to do it.
Super. Thank you.
Okay, so what I've put on the screen is the current plan for the project. Just for orientation, north is off to the left side of the plan. This is Cushing Lane coming down. This particular project is the White's Farm Field, which is located here. The solar project is confined to the field area. You'll see that we have the bordering vegetated wetland primarily off to the east side of the project. And that's also depicting the 100-foot buffer zone. And you'll actually see most of the activity proposed for this project is even outside of the 100-foot buffer zone. The exceptions to that would be a little bit of tree clearing here and here and here to create a line of sight, if you will, from the sun to the solar panels. And then the panels are located in the upland area outside of the 100-foot buffer zone. All of the equipment is several hundred feet away. And we do have an erosion control barrier, which I'll show on one of the other plans, running along the lower or down gradient edge of the construction area. Since the last meeting, we've made several changes to the plan. Number one, at the request of the fire chief, we have added a 3,500 gallon fire cistern outside the buffer zone, but up in this area to provide emergency water supply for the project. We also added some landscape plantings along the north edge here. This project's pretty isolated from everything, but there is a single family home generally here. And so we thought that adding some evergreen plantings in this area would be a positive buffering for the project. And so we did add that to the design plan. And then at our last meeting with the fire department and the planning board, it was asked that we make sure we have an open fire lane of 14-foot minimum width ringing around the project, so that the fire chief indicated he might want to bring in a four-wheel drive vehicle, something of that type at some point if there was a need, and wanted to make sure there was free access inside the fencing, but around the perimeter of the project. So to accommodate that, they're not looking to bring heavy fire equipment in there. It would really be a smaller vehicle that he would utilize if needed somewhere down the line. Well, I'll go to a little more detail here. Again, the erosion control barrier is this heavier line, and you can see this is a little different orientation north to the top. Here's Cushing Lane, and here's the wetland area, and here is the erosion barrier. So, you know, for the most part, we're in the outer limits of the buffer zone continuously. Here's probably the closest point to the wetlands, which is, you know, about a 30-foot separation. And then we have the erosion barrier coming to here. Very little grade change, if any, throughout the project. So this does not involve a lot of earth disturbance and activities either in or out of the buffer zone. One of the other changes we made is more of a notation on the plan. SW Cole suggested that prior to the removal of the erosion barrier, that there'd be an inspection made, any accumulated sediment removed, and that area that did have sediment have the area stabilized. So We've added that on our detail sheet for the project. And then they also, because we are picking up some stormwater runoff from beyond Cushing Lane, and we're creating a grass swale running along this edge, they asked that we create a drainage easement for the long-term maintenance of that swale down to and through into the wetlands, even though we are stopping the swale about 80 feet from the edge of the wetlands. So broadening at the end, letting the flow dissipate, and then continuing to travel where it wants to go down to the wetlands. So here are the plantings with the particular species being identified. We have white spruce, rhododendron, and mountain laurel being proposed for the buffer plantings. And again, here is the fire cistern up in this area here. So those are the changes that have been made since the last meeting. I think that addresses all of the comments that we've received to date, and be happy to answer any questions the commission may have at this time.
Thanks, Mr. Joseph. Agent Kelly, any questions?
Yes. What's going on the ground? What are you going to plant grass, or are you going to put in some kind of a pollinator mix, or?
Actually, we're showing grass, but in speaking with the applicant, he has suggested that if the commission thought it was appropriate to have a condition that a pollinator mix be appropriate to be utilized here, and they're very willing to incorporate that into any conditions that the commission may feel is appropriate here. There is a
Excellent.
seed mix on the plan, so if we go to one of the detail sheets, they have a specific seed mix that they've used on these projects. In this location, note number 8. However, again, in speaking to the client or the applicant yesterday, the pollinator mix is something they've been using more frequently on other projects, and would look to utilize that in this location as well.
Great. How about the cistern? How do you keep mosquitoes out of there?
Out of the what?
The cistern?
The cistern actually is a concrete bunker, a concrete tank, sort of a modified septic tank manufactured by Shea Concrete. There'll be the fire department connection points here. So this particular site does not have an actual detention pond, because we're converting the field to the grass surface and the runoff, which has been analyzed by SW Cole, by the way, and they've conferred that we're going to have a significant reduction in runoff. So this site does not have the detention basins. The second project we'll discuss tonight does, and we have added a feature to that was, I think, recommended by the commission at the last meeting.
Excellent. So it's underground, the cistern?
Yes, it is. Yep.
I
Oh.
see. Okay.
Anybody from the commission with questions for Mr. Joseph?
No.
Anybody else on the call with questions for the applicant or on the Zoom meeting? Mr. Joseph, if I could get you to stop sharing for a moment. Thank you. So with that, I will entertain a motion for a positive order of conditions with the stipulation that the proposed seed mix be replaced with the pollinator mix that the project proponent has offered. Everett, is that a motion from you? You're still on mute.
Can you hear me now?
I can.
Okay, I just have a question about the fencing.
Sure.
It says a farm fence. Most of the projects in town have been surrounded by chain link. It's up off the ground by 6 inches for wildlife passage. I looked at the plans briefly today and I had a minute, and it says they're using cedar posts. Are these cedar posts going to be long lived enough to survive Acushnet's damp ground?
Yeah, they've actually used this particular fence and this fence detail in other similar settings in southeastern Massachusetts. I think the most recent one was in Dartmouth, and it was a site with a fairly extensive adjacent wetland system and a really tilly soil, so the water really was saturating near the surface. They seem to have good luck with it, and this is a detail their fence supplier has recommended in this case.
Thank you.
And on that note, Mr. Joseph, is in terms of underneath the fence, and we may have addressed this at a previous meeting, is there a 6-inch separation at the bottom?
Yes, there is, and that's on the detail.
Okay, thank you. Just thought of that. All right, any further questions then?
No.
So, again, entertain a motion for a positive order of conditions with the one condition added being that, based on the offer of the proponent to replace the seed mix with a pollinator mix.
So moved, Bob.
Thank you, Everett. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Rick. Do we have any further discussion? Okay. Everett, how do you vote?
Yes.
Ryan?
Yes.
Rick?
Yes.
Heidi? That's unanimous. Thank you. And
Thank
quick
you.
note, we have had one additional commission member join the meeting since I announced who was present, and that is Heidi Pelletier. So there's 5 of us present now.
Okay.
All right, and next, also, another NOI continued, Alan Clapp, Woodbridge Renewables LLC, 1052 Main Street, file number SE 001-0561, property owner Nancy Brito Kitchen. Notice of intent was filed by Alan Clapp, Woodbridge Renewables LLC, for property located on 1052 Main Street, map 7, lot 23. The applicant proposes to construct a large-scale solar project, 1.0 megawatt, located at 1052 Main Street within the 100-foot buffer zone to a bordering vegetated wetland. The applicant is represented by Stephen Joseph of SciTech Incorporated. Plan name is Woodbridge Renewables LLC, 1 megawatt AC array in Acushnet, Massachusetts. AC being alternating current, in Acushnet, Massachusetts, dated September 1, 2020. And once again, Mr. Joseph, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Again, for the record, Steve Gioso with SciTech, Civil and Environmental Consultants. I'll share my screen again. And we'll go to the other project. And so this is, the address of this property is actually 1052 Main Street. However, this portion of the project is near Cushing Lane. So Cushing Lane is just to the east of this project, just over on this edge here. And the project, this is the back end of a very long, narrow parcel of land that has frontage on Main. And this rear portion is the area proposed for the solar project. In relation to the last project the commission just reviewed, that other project is just down to the south and east, down in this location here. So they actually touch each other, and they'll share this point of access coming in. So the access would be from Cushing Lane here into the project. Again, with the wetlands in this case being delineated at the far west end of the site, this line here representing the bordering vegetated wetland. The 100-foot buffer zone is here. And again, you can see the entire solar array and any of the equipment associated with it are actually outside of the 100-foot buffer zone. The work within the buffer zone is really limited to a stormwater management system. We've created a very shallow, very low berm running along here. The stormwater pattern in this area is kind of split from the middle, where the majority of the site comes in this direction, and then there is a component of the site which runs to the north and east. So in the area in the buffer zone, we've got this shallow berm, an outlet control structure, and an overflow pipe. The overflow discharge is about 50 feet from the wetland itself, so we've got a pretty good maintained natural buffer here for the flow. At the low point in the detention area, what was discussed at the last meeting was how we're going to control there being water here. So what we did was we're proposing a crushed stone base here so that there is some mechanism for recharge and also avoiding that ponding area here. So we did incorporate that into the plan after the last meeting. And we did a similar design change here on the northeast corner, where we have a designated 6-inch crushed stone base at the one area where the water would accumulate. So again, we would have that protection from just ponding water. And then again, just as the other project had been reviewed by SW Cole, this one did as well. They suggested a mechanism for dispersing the flow in a little more uniform fashion along this edge. And in doing that, what we've proposed is a level spreader, basically a concrete curb that would run for 75 feet. That would create a more uniform distribution of the flow. When you look at the runoff that's directed to this corner, it generally comes to a point here to here. And that's generally where we've set this level spreader. So it kind of mimics existing conditions, and the pond is designed to reduce flow to below pre-development levels. Again, the equipment pad areas are here and here, at least 300 feet from the wetlands. So a good separation. And then the access is here. As with the other project, the fire department, here's that underground cistern that was requested for the Cushing solar project. The fire chief said that by putting in a bigger than normal tank here, ordinarily they're looking for about a 2,000 gallon tank. We went 3,500 gallons. And the one cistern will serve both projects since they're being owned and operated by the same entity. And then the fire lane being kept open going around the project has been designated on the plan, again, in keeping with the fire department's recommendation. We've also added the similar note on the erosion controls so that when the construction's completed, here's our erosion control running along the western side of the property. We have a similar erosion control on the eastern edge. When that is removed, we would do an inspection, remove any accumulated sediment, and then stabilize the area. And as indicated in the last meeting, Mr. Clapp and his group are looking at substituting the pollinator mix for this site as well. They've, again, been incorporating that more in their projects over the last year, and it was something that he mentioned to me yesterday to put forward to the commission this evening. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
I'll turn it over to the agent in a moment. I have a quick question. In terms of the fence format, it's the same on this project as it is for Cushing Lane?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
And with the same 6-inch separation at the base.
Agent Kelly, anything from you?
No, I think that it's it's very similar to the last project. So no, I don't think I have any questions.
And I'm guessing, Steve, that the proponent would be able and willing to do the same thing here with pollinator mix?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Thank you. Anybody from the commission with questions or comments? Go ahead, Rick.
Question, that level spreader on the eastern side, can you explain again, what's the purpose of that? What is the function?
That's to, instead of having a point discharge on the drainage, the drainage naturally wants to go to that edge, but it's more of a sheet flow today, and it does start focusing as we get closer to the boundary line. So this would return the flow to more the sheet flow configuration, so it overflows in a more uniform fashion. Oh, and one other thing I forgot to mention, we did add, just as on the other project, if I may reshare again, we did add some landscape plantings on this project as well, on this particular project as well. And there was a question raised about adding some plantings to screen the utilities and the access drive here. So we do have a row of plantings proposed in this location. And as again previously mentioned, we're maintaining a undisturbed buffer in this area. So we've got a natural buffer here and a evergreen planted buffer running along this edge here.
Okay.
Heidi,
How far away is it from Main Street on that end?
Oh, we're over 1,000 feet from Main Street. We're probably close to 2,000 feet from Main Street, maybe about 1,500 feet. And there's the broad wetlands in between separating us from the Main Street portion of the applicant's, the owner's property.
Ryan or Everett, any questions? Mr. Kudo, you have a question.
Yes, good evening, Mr. Chairman. Through you, I have a couple questions. I'm not sure what board I would request this through. Yes,
Mr. Kudo, for the record, could we have your address, please?
yes, I represent lot 26E. Myself and my dad own it.
Okay.
I'd like to request a 50-foot buffer on my property line to the project. And I'm not sure what board I have to request that through.
I'm not either. Mr. Josa, any thoughts on that?
Well, I think that's a planning board issue primarily. However, the project is designed to meet all the applicable setback requirements for the town of Acushnet. So we have set all the elements of the project to meet the required setbacks. But I think that sounds like more of an item to bring before the planning board. We are still actively in front of them. I think we have a meeting maybe the second or third week in May with the planning board. So I think that's probably a better venue, especially where that area is outside the 100-foot buffer zone of the wetlands.
Okay, through you, Mr. Chairman. My next question is there any way, I'm looking to build 2 houses on my property, and I'm a little concerned that it seems like all the stormwater runoff goes onto our property. And I understand that right now, a lot of it does. But if we're gonna make improvements, isn't there a way to improve that so it doesn't affect our property and the neighbors on the other side of us also?
So if I may, Mr. Chairman, the drainage on this site actually drains in 2 directions. I'll share the screen again. Just it's a little easier looking at the picture.
Mm-hmm.
So let's go back one more plan. Okay, so there is a natural high point on the property right here. This is the ridge point. So you'll see about 2/3 of the property drains away from Mr. Kudo's land. Mr. Kudo's land is this parcel right here. And about 1/3 of the property does drain in this direction under existing conditions. So everything drains down and it generally congregates down in this corner here. There is a drainage swale that does run along this edge and continues on through. But the natural flow from this site goes to this corner. We're not able to redirect that flow to an alternate location because the topography doesn't allow us to do that. And as with the other project, we're not looking to do any grade changes here. So where water goes today, it will continue to go. There will be no change in direction. And all we can do is slow the water down, reduce it to at least existing conditions. And in this case, I think we have, especially for the bigger storms, we actually have a slight reduction in peak flows being directed both to the east and to the west. So we're actually creating exactly what Mr. Kudo asked for, some mitigation of the natural flow, but we can't keep the water from going where gravity brings it, which is down to this low point right here. All we can do under the regulations is detain it on the property, allow some recharge here, and then the overflow directed out in this direction. And then the natural topography again brings the flow to our level spreader and out in this direction. So the net result is no increase in flow to Mr. Kudo or any of the abutting properties. And we're mirroring natural conditions to the extent required.
Yeah, and you're required by law to not add flow to the neighbor's property anyway.
That's correct. We have to maintain that in keeping with the Wetlands Protection Act.
Marilee, any thoughts or comments on this? Your microphone is on.
No, I think it's pretty straightforward at this point.
Okay. Mr. Kudo, any further questions, comments? Do you feel like your questions have been adequately answered?
Yes, again, I would like that 50-foot buffer, but I'm not sure. I guess I'll request it through the planning board.
Yeah, I think that's your best option. That's not the kind, I mean, if it was a wetlands buffer, then, you know, we could speak on that.
Well, if I'm granted the 50-foot buffer, that pushes them closer to the wetlands, correct?
No.
Well, what would happen is if let's say the planning board requested us to create that buffer, we would not go any closer to the wetlands on the western side, only because we've already looked at, you know, the tree lines and sight lines for the panels. So getting closer to the natural wetland system really doesn't work for the solar project. So the project can't shift to the west. This is kind of the position to maximize the sun exposure. So if this commission does vote to approve this tonight, we would not be looking to do more work closer to the wetlands at a future date.
All right, so I'll open up for any further questions or comments. So looks like I will ask then for a positive order of conditions, again with the additional condition that the proposed grass seed mix now be a pollinator mix.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Ryan. Do we have a second? Thank you. From Heidi, you have a second? Heidi waves faster, Everett. So, Everett, how do you vote?
Yes.
Ryan?
Yes.
Rick?
Yes.
Heidi?
Yes.
That's unanimous. Thank you, Mr. Joseph.
All right, very good. Thank you. Good night now.
Good night.
Thank you, Mr. Cook,
Night.
for joining the meeting and asking your questions. Okay, and next on the agenda, we have a COC for Robert Bernardo, 829 Main Street, file number SE 001-0245. A certificate of compliance was filed by Robert Bernardo for property located at 829 Main Street, map 20, lot 13T. The applicant proposed to construct a driveway crossing through wetlands and construction of a single-family dwelling within the buffer zone of the bordering vegetated wetland. We did a site visit for this, and the work is clearly finished. Agent Kelly, any comments on this project?
I thought the place looked really good.
Anybody from the
It was, you know,
question?
it was clear, and there wasn't any debris around the wetlands or anything. It looked great.
Yeah, the crossing was clean and open. Anybody else with questions or comments about this project?
No.
Commission. I'm not sure. I see one name that I don't recognize. Is there anybody else on this call for this project? If not, I'll entertain a motion for a certificate of compliance for 829 Main Street.
So moved.
Motion from Everett. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second from Rick. Any further discussion?
No.
Everett, how do you vote? Everett, how do you
Yes.
vote? Ryan?
Yes.
Rick?
Yes.
Heidi? Thank you. That's unanimous. You know, it seems silly calling you even after you've made a motion or a second, but for the purposes of record keeping and all that, it's the wise thing to do. Next, we have a COC, Joseph de Oliveira, 7 Morses Lane, SE 001-0323. A certificate of compliance was filed by Jose de Oliveira for property located at 7 Morses Lane, map 18, lot 23H. The applicant proposed to construct a paved driveway crossing with a drainage system, installation of a well with associated grading within the 100-foot buffer zone or a bordering vegetated wetland. Plan name is Notice of Intent Plan Morses Lane dated November 15, 2004. This one had been sitting out there for a while. Agent Kelly, any comments from you about this project?
It looked like a finished project that was working well. To me, the drainage seemed to be working the way it was supposed to. And I didn't see the well, but the rest of it looked fine.
Mhm. Those of you that were there on Saturday, any questions or comments?
No, no.
Anybody else on the call with question or comment about this project? I say call, this is a Zoom meeting. Okay, in that case, I will entertain a motion for a certificate of compliance for this Morses Lane property.
So moved.
Thank you, Rick. We have a second from Heidi, second. Everett, how do you vote?
Yeah.
Actually, further discussion. No. Everett, how do you vote?
Yes.
Ryan,
Yes.
Rick,
Yes.
Heidi?
Yes.
That's unanimous. Thank you. Next, we have a COC, John Koska, Deep Brook Estates, file number SE 001-0103. A certificate of compliance was filed by Jose Costello for property located Deep Brook Estates off Park Drive. The applicant proposed to construct a roadway as shown on approved subdivision plans entitled Deep Brook Estates, involving crossing a bordering vegetated wetland and intermittent stream. Now, Agent Kelly, will you give us an update on this, please?
Yes, this and the next two are all three orders of conditions that were issued to Deep Brook Estates that were never acted on. So no work was done on this one or the next two. I think it was at one point, I think it was in court, and I'm not really sure why they didn't start it earlier, but I think there was a lot of history involved in this project.
And is
So they're looking to COCs just to clear it out so that they can transfer ownership, I think, and with a clean, no lien.
so Mr. Costello is the new owner of this property?
I think he will be once it gets cleared up.
Properties. All right, so this is something new for me, or issuing a COC for work that hasn't been done. So you're saying,
There's,
go ahead,
I'm sorry.
please.
There is a box to check on the COC application that says no work has been done and this project was never started.
Okay, so if anything happens here, Mr. Costello will have to come before the commission again. Is that correct?
No, there is one valid order of conditions, the most recent one that we just extended a couple months ago.
Right.
So that one is still valid.
But in terms of,
And that one, I believe, will build the subdivision.
okay, but with these three that are before us now, how do those fold into this active one or not?
No, they're all separate.
All right, so we vote on this. This is voting on checking off the box that said the work was never done. Is that correct?
Yes.
Questions, comments from the commission about this? Rick?
No, actually, no. I'm all set. Thank you.
Okay.
I was just thinking of something.
Anybody else? Everett, go ahead.
Yeah. As long as there is a box that says no work has been done and it's not really a completed project, I guess we can go ahead and vote for these three issues
Right.
as incomplete work.
And that's how I think we'll word all three of the motions on these three projects. So I will entertain a motion to issue a certificate of compliance to check off the box saying the work was not completed for Deep Brook Estates file number SE 001-0103. Will somebody make that motion?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Heidi. Any further discussion? Everett, how do you vote?
Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
Heidi?
Yes.
Rick?
Yes.
Okay, that's unanimous. We're going to repeat the process for these next two. This first one is COC, John Koska, Deep Brook Estates, file number SE 001-0162. A certificate of compliance was filed by Jose Costello for property located at Off Park Drive, map 18, lot 18. The applicant proposed to construct a roadway and related drainage structures within the 100-foot buffer zone of a bordering vegetated wetland. I'll obtain a motion to issue a COC to check off the box work not completed for this project.
Make a
So
motion.
moved.
Thank you, Everett. Heidi, that looks like a second from you.
Second.
Thank you. All right, any further discussion? Everett, how do you vote?
Yes.
Ryan?
Yes.
Heidi?
Yes.
Rick?
Yes.
That's unanimous, thank you. And COC, John Koska, Deep Brook Estates, file number SE 001-0379. A certificate of compliance was filed by Jose Costello for property located at Off Park Drive, map 17/18, lots 66 through 84, /lots 12F, 12S, 12T, 12U, 18, 18F, and 18G. The applicant proposed to complete construction of existing residential subdivision roadways, install necessary drainage and utilities, and construct detention basins within the 100-foot buffer zone of a bordering vegetated wetland. I will entertain a motion to issue a COC to check off the box work not completed for this Off Park Drive project. Thank you, Heidi. That's a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Everett. Everett, how do you vote?
Yes.
Ryan?
Yes.
Heidi?
Yes.
Rick?
Yes.
That's unanimous. Thank you all for that. Next item, we have an extension of an order of conditions. Town of Acushnet DPW, file number SE 001-0514. A request for an extension of an order of conditions was requested by Daniel Menard for property located at Lake Street, map 4, lots 49 and right of way, written here as ROW. The applicant proposes to continue to add sidewalks and guardrails to Lake Street within the 100-foot buffer zone to a bordering vegetated wetland. Plan name, proposed sidewalk and dock layout, Lake Street. That plan is dated January 13 of 2017. Agent Kelly, would you like to provide us with an update, please?
Yes, I believe Dan wants to continue on what he's done. So building up the side of the lake and along the roadside, and then build in sidewalk and guardrails so that people can fish from, the safety of the side of the street. Similar to what he's already done, but he wants to continue it.
Any questions from the commission, comments from the commission? Heidi?
Toward Main Street or,
Lake Street.
Both sides.
no, both sides going up? Oh, and the other way. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody else?
No.
Anybody else on this Zoom meeting with comment or question about this project? Okay. In that case, I will entertain a motion to extend the existing order of conditions. I'm guessing he's going to work quickly, but Marilee, what is normally 2 years, 3 years for an extension?
Oh, yeah, you might as well make it 3 years
Okay.
just to cover them.
Yeah, it's
But I
usually-
think he's going to start working in May, if
Okay.
possible.
They usually do extensions of 3 years. So I'll entertain a motion for an extension of the existing order of conditions until 2024.
So moved.
Great.
Thank you, Ryan. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Heidi. Any further discussion?
No.
Everett, how do you vote?
Yes.
Ryan?
Yes.
Heidi?
Yes.
Rick?
Yes.
Thank you. That's unanimous. Next item on here, the discussion for 4 Wilford Lane enforcement order follow-up. So we had issued, pardon me? So we had
Go
issued
ahead.
an enforcement order for Wilford Lane. And in that time, the property owner has actually added soil to cover, or added soil to cover the fill he had brought in. And if you recall, when we did a site visit, I talked to this property owner and recommended that he file with us after the fact in our RDA. So that way he could have a paper trail for what he's done. And this is how things, sometimes people file after the fact. And then the enforcement order, I think, also suggested the same thing. So it's unfortunate that after an enforcement order was issued, the property owner decided to bring in soil to cover up previous work. Before I make any other comments, Agent Kelly, do you have any information to add to this or updates, or have I summarized it well?
No, I think you've summarized it pretty well. I'm not sure what the next step is except to get lawyers involved, but I think you've summarized the situation very well.
I have thoughts on this, but I'll entertain questions or comments first before I add my recommendations.
Yeah, I've got a question.
Please.
Has the applicant, Mr. Adel, said anything, or has he reached out to the town at all, or nothing at all?
Marilee?
Nothing, not
Nothing.
a word.
All right.
Anybody else questions? So knowing that he had received an enforcement order and that I had talked to him during our site visit.
Yep.
And made a recommendation, as a way to follow the rules and, what the Wetlands Protection Act asks for. And not only has he not filed, he's brought in soil to cover up his previous work. I have three recommendations: that the soil he brought in gets removed, that anything that's with any fill, that, all that construction debris that's within 25 feet of the wetland line comes out, and that a no activity barrier of some form, whether it's, split rail fence, arborvitae, whatever, get put in place. So there is that no activity zone. So those are my thoughts on this. Questions, comments?
Yeah, I mean, given that he hasn't said anything at all and hasn't responded.
Mhm. Well, I don't like enforcement orders or good advice being ignored.
Right.
It doesn't look good if we don't act on
Yeah.
things that are, this kind of non-activity.
Yeah, since I met you, Bob, you're pretty mild-mannered and very level-headed. I heard what you said to the gentleman, and
Yep.
I think you were very courteous, and you didn't ask too much. Just asked him to file, and if he's not willing to work with you, I got your back 100%.
Yep. I agree.
I have some comment also. I had been there before a site visit because I was called by Joanne to go over and see what was going on. And I had a very long talk with Mr. Du. And I thought he kind of understood that he should stop and that we would be coming by, and he seemed like, yeah, okay, like this is pretty good. And I understand. And apparently he's decided he's not going to take our advice and try to do things the correct way. So I guess even though I'm a neighbor and I hate to be in the middle of like a neighborhood dispute, we have to do something to protect the bylaws of the Commonwealth, the laws of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, as far as wetlands go. And he's definitely not following the laws as they're written. So I guess we have to pursue it.
So, so with that, I will entertain a motion that, and I guess this becomes a new enforcement order, but I think it also has to involve lawyers now, unfortunately, in town council, that the commission would like, that almost sounds too soft, orders that the soil that was brought in after the enforcement order was issued gets removed. Any construction debris that's within 25 feet of the wetland line comes out, and that a barrier be put at that 25-foot line, so that 25-foot area becomes a no activity zone.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Ryan. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Rick. Any further discussion?
No.
Everett, how do you vote?
Yes.
Sorry to put you in the middle of a neighbor dispute, but that's how these things go. Ryan, how do you vote?
Yes.
Heidi?
Yes.
Rick?
Yes.
Thank you. That's unanimous. Merrily, I'm sure you'll keep us apprised of next steps. And now I know who James's iPad is waiting patiently for us. That's our building commissioner, Jim Merritt, Upland Circle proposal. Jim, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I mean, what I'm looking for really is a little support from the Conservation Commission. The Upland Circle that we've proposed is very similar to shape factors which most towns surrounding us have. And in fact, Acushnet does have a shape factor as well, but it has nothing relating to the protection of wetlands. One of the things that I've noticed in doing inspections is that as the land becomes more and more scarce, properties are being built in areas where they're very close to wetland. In fact, you know, the land underneath, even where it's not wet or not considered vegetated wetland, the land is still wet. This is forcing people to build their homes up rather than, you know, in the ground. So what happens is then the areas around those houses are being filled, and you're building a type of a pyramid really that takes stormwater and anything else that people put in their gardens or in their grass and directs it right into the wetland. So I think, you know, I had tried this, I think the first time back in 2015. Mr. Young didn't really agree with me and didn't take it to the planning board. It was proposed the past couple of years, but because the town meetings have been rearranged, mostly because of the virus, it never made the town meeting at that time as well. So I think hopefully this time it'll get onto the floor, and I'm looking for people to talk intelligently about it, realizing the impact that wetlands do have on the biodiversity that we really need in this world. And so I'm hoping it'll pass. And I can answer any questions you may have.
Thanks, Jim. Can you pull a nearby example off the top of your head, just so we have a frame of reference, you know, Like,
Well,
one of the-
I believe, Bob, without seeing the map, but I think that, the situation you just dealt with on Wilfred Lane, that
Mhm.
lot never would have been buildable had this been in place at the time. If you also go back to your other petitions this evening for Deep Brook, there are 2 or 3 lots in Deep Brook that would never be buildable under this condition. The only unfortunate thing is that I only applied this to the residential village district, which is really right around Main Street and South Main Street. Originally, I had tried to implicate it over the entire town, but like I say, it just never made it to town meeting. So I'm kind of hoping that this will be a first step, and maybe next year we'll look at proposing it over the entire residential or the RA zone.
All right, so right now you're saying it's just in the village area that you're?
Yes. As I've looked at properties like on Labonte Street, which has been developed, the land in some of these areas is extremely marginal. The homes are going up, at grade level, and up in the air from there. And that's all I can see is that the fill's going to come in, and it just, like even on Labonte Street, there's a brook that flows right behind it into the quarry property. But whatever people plant on their grass, their herbicides and pesticides and fertilizers, are all going to end up in that brook. And I just think it's time to start looking at how we can add protection to the wetlands that surround us. The land's becoming more and more marginal. And I think now's the time really to implicate it or implement it.
I like it. You've got my support on this.
Thank you very much.
Tim, can you explain a little bit where the circle goes?
Yeah.
Well, originally what we've tried to do is implicate or make the circle 90% of what the frontage requirement would be. So if we keep it in the village, that means they'd have to have a circle with a 90-foot diameter right in the front of the property, which is really where 90% of the houses go. Now, it can shift back and forth to touch the frontage or the frontage at the setback line, which is 25 feet. So that gives the developer or the builder, a little bit of flexibility. But, sometimes you have wetlands closer to the front, and they may be crossing with a driveway or whatever, which means they're still filing with you folks. But, I think it's a good tool. It was actually one that I brought, I want to say back in 1995 to Lakeville, as I sat on the planning board there. And the Conservation Commission there adopted it with a little bit of hesitation, only to come back 2 years later and suggest that it should be larger. And it was something that I actually adopted from the town of Hingham way back in the 80s. And so I think, and you'll notice, like one of the young men who works for me now just bought a piece of property, which is about 11 acres in Middleborough. And Middleborough has a shape factor, which is very similar. And again, that's not saying that they have to build in it, but the land has to have at least that area that would be buildable in addition to the 25% that our bylaws require for upland. But almost everybody builds their homes right on the street, so it faces, they're not building long driveways and.
Right. Yeah, so this doesn't run up against any takings issues or those kinds of things where people file claims that you're taking away my ability to build on my property.
No.
Okay. Especially if, that many towns have actually adopted this. Okay. So what are next steps then?
Go to town meeting.
At this point, Mr. Chairman, I don't think there's really anything other than the fact that if questions arise, and I can provide the board with some additional information on paper.
Yeah.
So I'm really just kind of looking for people to pass the word around and maybe to speak intelligently on town meeting if the question, seems to have opposition.
Okay. Yeah, so definitely send that to the agent so she can share it with us, she and or Joanne.
Thank you.
Anybody with questions for Jim?
No.
Thanks, Jim. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Oh, Okay, what I'm not seeing on here, and I definitely would like to add this to the next agenda, is the Evergreen Drive property, Fernandez.
Oh,
Just so we
that's
can get-
right.
Because I didn't make it, because I visited the site after the last site visit, and I've talked to their engineer as well. But since it's not on the agenda, we can't discuss it any further than that, other than to ask that it be put on. So next on the agenda is agent updates. So over to you, Marilee.
Well, it's spring, so there's violations all over the place.
Oh,
But I heard about another one today and another one yesterday, so I need to go check those out tomorrow. So tomorrow I may have more messages for you about them. But in the meantime, Evergreen Drive and Wilfred Lane are the only ones that are pending at the moment, I believe. And everybody else is doing what they're supposed to do so far.
and one of these will be that property located across from the north entrance of PJ Kitting, the one for which we received an email from Pat Hannon.
Yes, I'm going out there tomorrow.
Okay. All right. Anybody with questions for our agent?
Yeah, Marilee, I got a question. I didn't get credit for the 2 classes that I took the first week of the MACC classes. I don't know if Rick, did you get credit or an email? Or
Yeah.
anything?
I got an email for a credit. Yeah, I did.
How many classes did you take?
I took one.
Just the one with me?
No,
think-
yes, just the one with you. Yes.
Yeah, I think, yeah. So I didn't get credit for any classes that I took the first week of the thing. So that was
Okay.
my,
Check.
Okay, I'll call them.
yeah, because I got credit for I took 3 classes the second week. And I got credit for all those, but not the first week. So,
Yeah, I checked again. I did get the credit on that. Yep.
all right. Yeah, that was my only comment or question to you, Marilee.
Okay, I'll call them up.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Get credit for that. Heidi, or Robert, anything?
Yeah, I have a question.
Please.
We were on Moss's Lane on Saturday.
Yes.
There's quite a bit of filling going on along the side of the Moss's Lane. Who allowed that? Why is it being done? Is the town doing it? Is the person who's putting the solar field in the back doing it? Do they have, I mean, it looked like they're kind of infringing on wetlands to me, and we're only at the bottom of Moss's Lane.
Yeah.
Yeah,
According to Mr. De Oliveira, that was because of the solar field.
no, that was the DPW did that.
Oh, DPW. Okay. He said something about widening the road or something.
Yeah, I think that the people that live on that road probably appreciate it because it is a narrow road. But no, we didn't know about that ahead of time.
Well, appreciating something and having it being done through the correct channels are 2 different things. I would greatly appreciate it if they took the curve away from the front of my house, but they're not doing that. Instead, they're building a super speedway bridge down the road. If that project hasn't been engineered, I don't think it should continue.
Okay.
Yeah,
You,
you asked DPW.
do you want to see the file after the fact?
Yeah, that'd be good.
I think so. Something has to be on paper and corrected.
Mhm.
Okay.
And then it's still really like up where used to be John Vickers' house, where the road goes really narrow. There's a big stone wall that sticks out. What are they intending on doing to get by there? Because there's a telephone pole and a big stone wall on the other side.
Oh, it's going to be tough.
So
I don't know that they're planning to do anything there, to tell you the truth, but I'll find out.
why do they have to widen the bottom half? And they actually, there's more gravel up beyond that point where it narrows down to almost a one-car pass. Okay, that's all.
Anybody else with business for the commission? So it looks like our next meeting is scheduled for Tuesday, May 11, and it will be another Zoom meeting. So seeing no further business proposed, I will entertain a motion to adjourn. Thank you, Heidi. Do we have a second?
Second,
Thank you. This can be a waving vote. So all of you in favor, wave, say aye. All right.
Aye.
Aye.
At 7:11.